Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Icing on the Skate podcast. Season 1, episode 16. We're blitzing through these week after week. But don't think about the 2 weeks that we missed and the one before that. But we're blitzing
nothing
through
happened
these.
in those 2 weeks. It's fine.
What's that?
I said nothing happened in those 2 weeks. It was just Christmas.
Everyone took a break, so we did as well. So yes, hello, welcome back to another episode. Odd Man Rush here. Hi. Some of you may know me as the guy that talks shit on the internet. And we have over there Chris Gadsby, a guy that talks shit semi-professionally.
Yeah. Basically.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, I can't really describe it any better. So, yeah, we got some stuff to talk about. Apparently Chris wants to go on a rant, which I wasn't expecting. But I think before we start, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the scores and the standings and the news and all that stuff, let's just take a moment of silence, ladies and gentlemen. A moment of silence for the Nottingham Panthers, who unfortunately have played like shit the last few weeks, and they may as well bury themselves 6 feet under at this point with their season hopes. So, just a moment of silence for, even though we signed an NHLer with 650 NHL games under his belt, he scored a goal, which is great. But a moment of silence for the fact that we can't beat Manchester. That's it. Can't beat Manchester.
Don't get me started.
And they lost in overtime to the Cardiff Devils, which more understandable. But anyway, moment of silence. Even though they
Max is just like not worth a moment of silence. The moment of silence is going to start
the whole way through it.
Yeah, the moment of silence is going to start now. Right, that's enough. Right,
yeah,
they were absolute dreadful. I'm sorry, but they were awful.
So,
as soon as that first goal went in.
Hold your horses, son. Shall we get through the scores and the standings first, and then you have plenty of time to rant, rather than like condensing it into like this 5 minutes. You'll be able to have plenty of time. So, scores and standings, please, Chris. Have you got your calendar on the right month?
Yes. Yeah, new calendar. It's got Alexander Ovechkin on it this month.
Ah, nice.
It's this new NHL.
That was a Christmas present, wasn't it?
It was NHL All-Stars calendar, and nobody from the Rangers.
Well,
right.
It's understandable. Have you seen our team recently? Fucking hell. we got 7 goals scored on us last night. I stopped watching after the second period because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd be writing some scripts for some videos, and I was like, I'm going to sleep.
Okay, only weekend games in the Elite League this week just gone. On the Saturday, it finished Guildford 7, Coventry 8 in overtime. Glasgow 2, Cardiff 4, Nottingham 0, Manchester 3.
Hey, happy birthday, Chris!
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for a great birthday present, Panthers. Milton Keynes 5-6 after overtime, and Sheffield 3, Dundee 6.
Oh.
It gets even better than that on Sunday. So, Glasgow on Sunday, Glasgow 8, Milton Keynes 3. Dundee against Sheffield again, this time Dundee 6, Sheffield 1. Coventry 5, Guildford 6. That one finished 6. Guildford won by 6-5 on penalties.
Oh, yeah.
So, between them, what was that? That's 13 all.
Wow.
Over 2 games. Manchester 7, 5-4. And Cardiff 5, Nottingham 4 in overtime.
Yay!
What that means for the standings is Cardiff are top, 36 games played, 58 points. Belfast in second, 35 games played, 53 points. Nottingham somehow still in third, 41 games
played. 5 more games than every single other team around
41 games played, 49 points. 5 in fourth, 36 games, 42 points. Glasgow in fifth, 35 games and 40 points. Guildford in sixth, 36 games, 38 points. Coventry in seventh, 35 games, 37 points. Dundee in eighth, 38 games, 37 points. Manchester in ninth, 37 games, 35. Sheffield in 10th now, 37, 35. Well out of the playoff spots. and Milton Keynes in 11th, 38 games played, 26. So Cardiff romping away at the top of the table, 5 points clear. Belfast have a game in hand on them, but as I said, they're 5 points back, so they can't catch them.
Yep.
And they are now well ahead of the rest of the league. If we take the Panthers out of it for the moment because of the games they've played that are extra, Belfast already have an 11-point gap on 5 in 4th with a game in hand, and Cardiff are 16 points clear of 5, having played the same number of games. So Cardiff could go 19 points of the Panthers if they were to win their games in hand.
Wow. So I should also add, just in case you're curious on any win or losing streaks taking place, the Cardiff Devils currently have a 7-game winning streak in the Elite League, which is understandable considering they're at the top of the standings at the moment. The Panthers are on a 4-game losing streak, although that does include an overtime loss yesterday. So they are getting some points, but not enough. The Sheffield Steelers way down in 10th. They have a 5-game losing streak, and the Milton Keynes Lightning at the bottom of the standings have a 4-game losing streak. They're kind of the biggest streaks out of the lot. So, yeah, I mean, a couple of things that we said last week are very much being emphasised again this week. We said with the bottom half of the playoff race, all it would take is a few teams to have a couple of losing streaks, and a couple of teams to string together some wins, and you'd see that completely change. I wasn't expecting Sheffield to be the penultimate team in the league at this point. I mean, they were pretty bad to start the season, but by the looks of it, they haven't really improved that much. They have, but they haven't improved. Like, they're out of a playoff spot. Like, that's good. That
double loss to Dundee this weekend really kind of did not help them. I mean, they are still only 2 points outside the playoffs, but to lose 6-1 and 6-3 to Dundee, concede 12 goals in 2 games against Dundee.
Yeah, I heard that Tom Barrasso, the head coach, this is all hearsay, and I might not have got this right, but he supposedly, after the first game against Dundee, kind of threw Jackson Whistle under the bus a little bit, and basically tried to say, like, our goaltender needs to be a lot better than he actually was. And then their backup goaltender, Matt Climmy, I think is how you pronounce it, went in, and he allowed, like, 5 goals before Whistle got put back in the game. So it's like,
at least he did the post-match interview, unlike some coaches when they lose.
Yeah, you know. So that's the standings at the moment. Like we said last week as well, it's still very much a 2-horse race, and I think it's going to stay that way for the remainder of the season. The fact that Cardiff have pulled away by 5 points with, I mean, of course, Belfast have a game in hand, and they weren't in action at all this weekend, which we'll get into slightly later. That's quite impressive still. They're very much going for their 3-peat. There's just something about Cardiff. They do stuff right over there. Like, ever since they've had the changing of management and the changing of sort of people in charge, they're doing things right, and it shows with potentially 3 back-to-back league championships. Like, you think the other teams in the league would look at that and go, this is how we need to run our franchise. We need to find what they do really well with their team and work with that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we do this every week, which is probably why it's kind of, I mean, it seems to have snuck up on me a little bit, because it was all kind of really tight, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to say I wasn't really paying attention, and then all of a sudden Cardiff and Belfast are like way out in front, and Cardiff are even way out in front of Belfast.
Well, you know why? It's because the Panthers and the Flyers have both had pretty rough stretches recently.
That is true.
So when they were sort of going on 2, 3, 4 game losing streaks, the Devils and the Giants were going on 7, 8 game winning streaks. So
yeah, that's true.
That's where the separation has come, absolutely. But yeah, to see Sheffield so low down for one of the most popular and most publicised teams in the league to be so far down this year is shocking, I think. We've, of course, talked about them a lot throughout this season, all of the turmoil and all of the ups and downs that their season has had so far. But it is a potential possibility that they miss the playoffs. How huge would it be if the Sheffield Steelers missed the Elite League playoffs?
It would be a big miss. Yeah, it really would. I mean, Cardiff are, as I mean, you would say they were favourites. I mean, they're not even 2/3 of the way through the season yet, but Cardiff will make history if they win the league. No team has done a three-peat in Elite League history.
Yeah.
Coventry went back-to-back 06-07 and 07-08. The Steelers went back-to-back 14-15 and 15-16, and of course Cardiff have gone 16-17 and 17-18, but nobody's ever gone 3 in a row.
Interesting.
So
we might have a bit of history.
We might.
History here. That would be awesome. I mean, I've got to be honest, like, the fact that the Panthers are out of it, I'm actually quite enjoying Cardiff and Belfast being up there. Like, as much of a Panthers fan as I am, they're just not a good enough team. Like, on paper, they look like a great team, but something's not working in that locker room. Something's not working with the players that they've got. To be honest, it kind of does seem to an extent, and this is all my own opinion and all hearsay, it seems like a bunch of guys that have known each other through previous teams that they've played with and the players that they've played on previous teams, maybe in juniors, NHL, etc., or family friends, long-time friends, and they're just kind of having fun, and they're not really, like, focusing on trying to win a championship. I think since Christmas they've kind of been a little bit too lax. I don't think they care enough, you know? Like, especially the imports. It's like, what are they going to gain by winning a championship, you know? They're probably just going to move on next year anyway. Like, you've got to have that sense of stability and the desire to win from the bottom or from the top down, you know? I think, like, the Cardiff Devils, for example, will bring them up because, like you said, they have the potential to make history in the Elite League, which, having a three-peat in any league is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Like, the Elite League is one of those lower leagues in Europe. I mean, maybe not in Europe much longer after Brexit, but they're one of the lower tier leagues sort of in the wider hockey world. Like, you have Sweden and you have Finland and you have Denmark and Switzerland and all of those places that have really solid hockey teams, and they produce or house a lot of ex-NHLers or future NHLers. The Elite League isn't really one of those hotbeds for hockey talent at the moment, and understandably so. But that doesn't take away that three-peating would be so incredible for the Cardiff Devils. Yeah. I think that would be a true testament to how fantastic that organisation is run. Like, I have nothing but props for the Cardiff Devils. Like, they do their stuff right. Like, if you look at their stats, 27 wins, 5 losses, and 4 overtime losses. And that's not taking into account playing, 6 extra games in the Champions Hockey League?
Yeah.
Like, they've been doing other stuff as well. And whilst they didn't do too well there, it hasn't mattered. Like, they've played more games, arguably, than any other team bar Belfast. And they're at the top of the league, and the players that they're bringing in constantly and the players that are leaving their team, they're doing essentially what Guildford did last year. Cutting the fat, bringing in better players, you know?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's what Max has said. He said he wants the dirty laundry aired from the Panthers because the Devils did it. They cut the fat away. Now they've got 2 league titles. They've got, they're looking at a third in the face. And, yeah. I mean, with Belfast not securing that CHL spot for the Continental Cup, we only get one this year going to the league winner. It looks as though it may well be Cardiff again.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised.
No.
I think it's very interesting to see Cardiff doing so well again. Like we said, it's not unprecedented. I think we both kind of knew that they were going to be up there. We both thought they might not win, but we thought they'd be up there just because the fact that they've never done it before. But I really do think the arena teams should take a look at what Cardiff are doing. Like, the people that bought the organisation, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but they genuinely care, or it appears to me, somebody completely outside of the organisation, and to be honest, doesn't really know a huge amount about the Cardiff Devils organisation. I've never been to Cardiff before. They seem to...
Oh, you should have gone. It was so good.
Okay. I'm sure I'll go at some point. I'm sure I'll go at some point.
It's so good down there.
But, like, the owners and the management seem to care. They seem to want to do the best they can in order to win their fans and their team a championship. Whereas some of the other arena teams, I think, are more focused on it from a business perspective. You know, from how many fans we're getting through the doors, how much merchandise are we selling. The best way to improve revenue is to have a good team that wins. Nobody wants to go and see a team that loses all the time. Why do you think Edinburgh's not in the league anymore?
Well,
you know?
Yeah. I mean, when we do next week's podcast, that'll be a big telling point because it's a double header, Cardiff-Belfast this weekend.
I remember you mentioning
and Belfast are away in Cardiff, both of those games. So Cardiff can pick up 4 points there. and that would move them then 9 points clear of Belfast.
Yeah, I think with that weekend, if Cardiff win both of them, then it's very likely that it's almost guaranteed. I think, in my opinion, that they're going to win. If both teams get one of them, then I think it's going to be a 2-horse race till the very end of the season.
Yeah.
And if Belfast win them, I think they could have a chance to jump over, because 4 extra points from them, they're only 1 point back from Cardiff.
Yeah, and then if they do take those 4 points, Cardiff have then got to go to Belfast for a double header at the end of February.
Oh, there you go, and then they have home ice advantage.
Yeah, so that is,
Exactly.
if Belfast can take points out of Cardiff this weekend, that really is going to hot up for the entirety of the season. It's going to go down to one of the final 2 weekends.
And I've got to be honest, like, it's exciting. It's
is.
exciting it being so close.
I'm enjoying watching the bottom of the league as well. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Milton Keynes aside, because they're 9 points off Sheffield above them.
Yeah.
But like there's what, 3 points separating 6th and 10th.
Yeah, and like we said, it's just showcasing how improved the league is from previous seasons. Like, how there isn't really much disparity from one team to another.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, unless something changes, one of Coventry, Manchester, and Sheffield are going to miss out on the playoffs altogether.
Which would be crazy.
You know, Coventry and Sheffield both have league titles. Manchester, did so well last season.
And then they've completely fallen off a cliff this year.
Well, yeah, apart from the results this weekend, but
we'll get into that. So, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to start going through the news? Because we've got quite a few news articles.
We do have a lot of news to go through, yes.
But we can get the rant out of the way now if you want. Let's get it out of the way now. So,
well, Max was there as well, so he'll be able to chip in with this.
So, for those of you who are unaware of the Nottingham Panthers fixtures this last weekend, they had a game at home against Manchester, and then they played in Cardiff on Sunday, right? So Saturday, home Manchester, which was Chris's birthday. Happy birthday, Chris. And,
belated. Thank you.
And Sunday was away in Cardiff. Now, it was a 2-0 victory for the Manchester Storm.
3-0.
3-0. So the Manchester Storm went into Nottingham and they won the game 3-0 against the home team on Chris's birthday. And then...
and I was one number off the 50-50 as well. For 1,500
so
quid.
And then the second game, it went to overtime. The Nottingham Panthers, blew a 2-goal lead in the third period. Surprise, surprise. And lost in overtime.
7th time this season.
The 7th time. And,
7th time this season they've blown a lead in the third period.
Wow. And the Cardiff Devils won that game in overtime, meaning that for the second straight week, the Nottingham Panthers had a 1-point weekend.
Way!
So, Chris, take it away, bud.
1-point weekend. Right, so it was... The first period was okay.
I'm expecting a rant here, bud. Come on.
Yeah, the Panthers... No, the rant comes. You've got to build up to it. They started all right, and then the more the first period went on, Manchester got more and more into the game.
Which is exactly what you said to me when you messaged me.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the first period.
In the second period, the first Manchester goal went in, and then it was every man for himself. Every single Panthers player was all about, they have to be the ones, this is from my point of view, they had to be the ones to tie the game up and, save the game for the Panthers and all the rest of it. We had players going from one end of the ice to the other, trying to dangle around every single Manchester Storm player.
I
saw Billingsley do it as well a couple of times.
Wow, okay.
Try and go past every single Manchester Storm player, and of course get stick checked midway in the Storm zone, and then of course is miles out of position.
Yep. And
it just all went downhill.
When your defense is trying to lead the rush constantly, going out of position to do it, there's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, and it was just, I just couldn't. I mean, they lost Lepine in the first period, which didn't help. And then there was some weird.
I'm not gonna lie. Just sorry to add in here. I don't see the hype around Lepine. I'm putting it out there. I know he was a good player the first time round. Yeah. I think, to be honest, in my opinion, and this is from somebody that became a fan over the last couple of years, I don't have that sentimental value for him. I think there's quite a lot of times he does more harm than good.
There was a lot of... The power play was typical Panthers power play, where I think we had about one shot.
Hey!
Because you spend the first 1 minute and 40... You spend the first 1 minute and 40 passing the puck around trying to find that perfect shot rather than just firing it on net because there's, a double screen in front of net.
Also known as the New York Rangers power play method. Watched it in full force last night on a 5-on-3. Yep, brilliant. Nice job, lads.
And then towards the end, when you're 2-0 down, we pulled the netminder. So we've got the extra attacker. We're going D to D along the blue line. And I don't know, I'm not entirely sure who it was because it was on Max's side of the arena. But he fires a pass along the blue line in the air straight at Olsen's chest. That Olsen can't control. It goes out of the zone. And of course, everybody's got to retreat. And eventually the Storm get it and just go down the ice and put it into the empty net. And it was just... There just didn't seem to be... It was the same as, again, in the shutout against Belfast in the teddy bear toss, where you've got a massive head start on them to retrieve pucks off a potential icing call. You've got like a 5-10 yard head start, and they still beat you to the puck.
The problem that I think with the... So, for those of you who are, like, new to the podcast, we will just say that for the Elite League, we're primarily... Well, Chris is definitely a Panthers fan. I'm primarily a Panthers fan. But we like to be more critical of them over any other team, because it's only fair that if
Mainly because we watch them most.
Yeah, and if you somewhat have a bias for a team because you're a fan of them, I think it's only right that you're more critical of them. Like, we're not... I'm not going to sit here and say the Panthers are playing great, because they're not. They're playing like shit. Like... They've played at least 5 or 6 more games than pretty much every other team in the league, and they're 9 points back from first place. Like, that's not good enough for a team of the calibre of the Nottingham Panthers, with the budget of the Nottingham Panthers, with the connections of the Nottingham Panthers. Like, I'm going to put that out there. I am more critical of them than any other team in the Elite League. Most of the other teams, I have nothing but nice things to say about them half the time. Whereas the Panthers, I mostly have criticisms to say, because criticism's important. And I think... With the Panthers, the problem is they started off the season really well. They started off pre-season really well. They don't know what kind of team they are. That's the problem. They don't have a go-to guy other than Guptill. Guptill, I mean, he is a bit of a puck hog in points, but that's because in his defense, I think he has to be sometimes, because if he's not doing something like that, nothing's happening. Like you said, if he's not taking the puck, holding it for a little while and actually trying to drive to the net and get an offensive scoring chance, the puck's just being passed around the perimeter until they find this perfect opportunity that never comes. So, yeah, Guptill scored, like, he's either leading the league or very up there in the league in goals scored. Like, he's doing his end of the bargain. The problem is, nobody's stepping up. Nobody's going, okay, this is my team now. We're going to make sure, or like, I'm going to do my very best to make sure I lead this team to a victory by pumping the guys up on the bench, even if a goal's scored against them, by leading by example. Like, you would argue that's the captain's job.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad in the sense that, I mean, they got their second goal was a power play goal in the third, and that really put the game to bed. And I mean, that was off a Luke Piver penalty. It was a double minor in the end because not only did he concede the penalty, but he then decided to have a go at the referee. And it wasn't Darnell who gave that penalty, it was the other referee whose name escapes me. But yeah, Luke Piver all of a sudden gets a double minor.
And they've got to stay out the bloody box.
Yeah, they scored on the first power play, and of course he still doesn't come out the box, and they've still got 2 minutes on the second power play. If he'd have just taken the call and gone with it, they'd have only had the one power play. But
So just to bring in power plays and penalty kills, right? The Nottingham Panthers have the third most penalty minutes in the league. First is Manchester with 848. Second is Milton Keynes with 706. Third is the Panthers with 669.
To be fair, they've played more games though, so the average would come down.
True, but the next one after them is the Sheffield Steelers with 518. Now, what do you notice about all of those teams that I've just mentioned?
What was it? Manchester, Milton Keynes and Sheffield?
Yep.
Well, they're the three that aren't in the playoffs.
Exactly. They're the three teams that aren't in a playoff spot at the moment. Granted, Manchester and Sheffield are still pretty close. The problem is, if you take so many penalties like that, you don't win games. The stats show it. Like, I don't think I can add anything to that and make it more clear, you know? Sheffield on a 5-game losing streak. Manchester, they're on a 3-game winning streak, but they're under 500. Milton Keynes, they're way under 500 on a 4-game losing streak. The Panthers on a 4-game losing streak. Like, apart from Manchester, all those 3 teams are on at least 4-game losing streaks. Because they're taking so many penalties, they can't stay out the box, and they're letting the teams basically capitalise on any scoring chance that they get when you're down a man. Like, it's ridiculous. And you could say quite a lot of these criticisms, arguably, could go to the Sheffield Steelers as well. Like, if you want to talk Steelers, like, they don't know what team they are either. Either that, or they're just not consistent enough. Like, they've had some pretty key injuries throughout the season, to be fair. However, they just haven't... The problem with the Panthers and the Steelers, I think the Panthers and the Steelers have gone for big names rather than guys that fit the mentality. They've gone for, oh, this guy played so many games in the NHL. Oh, this guy was a former this draft pick, which they always do every season to an extent.
I was going to say, Max, you've seen this as well. There's a lot of, and I've seen it before, where things aren't going well, and then a piece of news comes. And it's almost...
It's a diversion tactic.
Yeah, it's almost like a diversion tactic. It's, you know, everything's going badly, but hey, here's this huge signing, and then everyone loves them again.
But you know why? Because then the fans get hope again that they're actually going to do well. That this new player is going to help lead the charge to change. Which I think is fair. Like, you can't expect a fan to go, oh, that signing, yeah, that's not going to help. Because then they'll be branded like, oh, you're not a real fan, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't go much, because when I'm at the arena, it's with the Lions. But Max, as you've been a lot more than me in the chat. When we went on Saturday, there were people leaving with 9-10 minutes to go in the third period. Now, they were only 1-0 down at that point. I think they might have just gone 2-0 down. With 10 minutes to go, anything can happen. Belfast scored 2 in 1 minute and 12 to take it to overtime on Sunday night. And to me, that just shows how little faith the fans have got in the team to bring it back, that you're leaving with 10 minutes to go.
Well, they've had enough, and rightly so. Yeah. Like, if you pay 20 quid for a ticket, you're like, they're not expecting you to win every game. I think the majority of the fans will say that they're not expecting the team to win every game, but they bloody well expect them to try. You know? Like, and I think that's the problem. The fans think that the players either aren't trying or don't care. Which, to an extent, I agree with them. Like, if they really cared, they would have beat Manchester. I'm sorry, but Manchester's a good team, don't get me wrong, but we've beaten them enough times this season.
Yeah, twice in the... no, it was only once, wasn't it, in the quarterfinal, but the margin was so big.
Beating them in the regular season, yet you get shut out on home ice against a team that's out of the playoffs. Now, granted, like I said, Manchester is a very good team. Kieran Long for their team is fantastic. He's having a great season. Seems to score every single game at the moment that he's playing. But, like, they're, what, 9th? They're 8th? They're 8th in the league, you know?
Yeah. 9th in the league.
Sorry, yeah, they're 9th in the league. So, but anyway, we might get back to that a little bit later.
Let's move on, because otherwise we're going to be here till 10 o'clock. Let's move on.
You've had your rant. I joined in the rant in a little bit for a little bit. So, anyway, moving on to the Elite Ice Hockey League news, and then we'll move on to the NHL news afterwards. So, speaking of big name signings and sort of NHL draft picks and former players of the league, we had a few new in inverted commas, ex-NHL players join the Elite League this last week. The first being goaltender Matt Hackett for the Coventry Blaze. So, this is an article written by the Elite League website on January the 9th, so it wasn't that long after our previous podcast. So, Coventry Blaze have strengthened their netminding with the addition of Canadian Matt Hackett, a 2009 77th overall draft pick, went on to play 25 games in the NHL with the Minnesota Wild and the Buffalo Sabres. He also played in 213 regular season AHL games with a save percentage of... that's not how you do a save percentage. Oh, that's different to NHL. It's weird. But 90.9, so .909. Why not just do it like that? 909, yeah. And he helped lead the Houston Aeros to the Cup Finals in 2011. He was named to the AHL All-Star team in the following season, so 2012, and was called up to the Canada's World Championship squad. He spent most of last season in Slovakia with the newly promoted Detva. He finished the season with a save percentage of .897. However, the interesting thing is the change here. Oh, interestingly, I want to mention this, but before we carry on, interestingly, they mention on this article, for the current campaign, Hackett was signed by Medvesac Zagreb. Remember them?
Not according to Elite Prospects, he wasn't.
Oh wow, that's what I say on here. However, the deal fell through, leaving the goalie looking for a new opportunity.
Oh.
Because remember Medvesac Zagreb, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about them a couple
Elite
of
League
episodes
feeder
ago.
club.
Yep, basically the club that had a fire sale just before Christmas and was like, here, take all of our players. Take all of
14 players in 2 days or something.
You get a player, and you get a player, and you get a player. So Matt Hackett is the new goaltender to kind of join the revolving door of goaltenders in the Coventry Blaze organisation so far this season.
5, wasn't it, since November?
So Mika Weichman got injured, left for France. Miroslav Koprova joined the team recently. It looked like he was still struggling from an injury that he suffered the past season or earlier this year. So they've essentially said goodbye to him as well. Now Matt Hackett comes to join the fold, and we'll see how he does, I guess. Head coach Danny Stewart says, and I quote, "He's a big guy that will bring us elite goaltending at this level every night." So, Chris, what do you think about the revolving door of the Coventry Blaze?
I mean, Coventry played Guildford this weekend, so maybe not a good representation, but so far he's played 2 with a goals against average of 7.41.
Fuck. Matt Hackett, everyone. Welcome to the Elite League.
So I mean, maybe that will come down when they play other teams.
I hope so. For Coventry's sake.
Save percentage of .816, which is
that's awful.
Yep, the worst in his career.
That's awful.
So well done, Coventry.
Could you imagine a goalie in the NHL having a save percentage of .816? They would be blacklisted by Gary Bettman himself. He'd be like, don't you ever step foot on an NHL rink ever again. This isn't the 70s anymore, bud. Gretzky's not still on the ice, I mean, he played in the 80s, but that's besides the point.
Yeah. So, yeah, not the greatest goals against average and save percentage so far, but
like you said, small sample size.
Yeah, small sample size.
Two very uncharacteristic games between those two teams.
Come back to it in a couple of weeks and kind of see if it's come down and if he's settled in a bit more, I suppose.
Essentially, this is...
when was that announced? The 4th?
The 9th.
The 9th. Yeah, that was Wednesday, so he did have a little bit of time to settle in, I suppose. I don't know when he actually arrived, but...
Yeah, but granted, I think this is head coach Danny Stewart saying, right, first of all, we need a healthy goaltender for once. That'll be good. And second of all, going, right, we're going to push for the playoffs. There is very much a chance that they don't make it if they keep going the way that they're going. So we need a solid goaltender that has an elite set of skills that can come in and help the team make the playoffs. I think Coventry are very much in the make the playoffs mentality here, taking each game as it comes, which is what you could say about quite a few teams. But anyway, moving on. So Matt Hackett joins the Coventry Blaze. We move on to the Cardiff Devils, the lovely golden boys of the Elite League at the moment, the Cardiff Devils.
Who somehow, even though you wouldn't have thought it possible, are strengthening again.
Yes, they're finding more players to add to their roster. And the next person they've added is winger James Livingston, who has joined the team for the rest of the season. He joins from DEL2 side EC Bad Nauheim, I think that's it, where he's put up 68 points in 77 games over 2 seasons. Prior to that, his first top in Europe... His first top in Europe trip, whatever that means. The Elite League don't know how to spell check by the looks of it. He's 28 years old. He had 27 and 29 points in 2 seasons in the EBEL, which I believe is where Medvesac Zagreb play. Luckily, he didn't play for that team. He's a former third-round NHL draft pick of the St. Louis Blues in 2008. He spent 5 seasons in the AHL, 3 seasons playing for Worcester or Worcester, however you want to call it. The top affiliate of the San Jose Sharks before moving to the Manchester Monarchs, which at the time was the top affiliate of the LA Kings. And Andrew Lord, head coach of the Cardiff Devils was quoted saying, "James is going to add depth to our forward unit at a time when we are going through a tough stretch of games. He's a solid two-way forward, and the reports on him came very positive about his attitude and work ethic." Oh, that's it. That's interesting. A player with good attitude and work ethic added to a team that's playing really well, full of players with good attitudes and work ethic. What a surprise. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, Cardiff are such a good organisation.
They're so stacked
from
at the moment,
top
aren't
to
they?
bottom.
They're like
Not
the Tampa
just-
Bay of the Elite League.
not just the on-ice team, but the whole mentality right the way through.
Yeah.
You know, everybody is just... They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They all know what they want to do. And I bet everybody there loves going into work on a Monday morning.
Yeah, and they put the team first before themselves.
Yeah.
Which is how it should be.
He's done well in, I mean, not the top European leagues, because I mean that he was in the Del 2, but putting up decent numbers in the Del 2. I mean the elite league teams can beat some of the teams in the top leagues in Europe on a one-off game, but I reckon that the Del 2 maybe is slightly below, but probably not too far away from the elite league.
Oh yeah.
So
I definitely think he could. I definitely think he can put up similar production.
Yeah, I do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I think
everybody
it'll be a point
kind
per
of
game.
look out.
I don't think it'll be a point per game. I think it'll be just under.
Yeah, probably.
Like
I mean, he
couple of
played
points
for Cardiff
under.
this weekend and didn't get any points, but
Yeah. But
you've got to let these
first
players
week.
settle.
Yeah, first week,
exactly.
let him settle.
Exactly.
So yeah, Livingston joins the Cardiff Devils on an already stacked roster. Then we move on to the Team GB squad. So Pete Russell, head coach of the Glasgow Clan and Team GB, as he's been for a little while, he announced his squad for Team GB's friendly match against Dynamo Riga. They've spelt it wrong here. It's D-I-N-A-M-O, not Dynamo. It's Dynamo, actually. Dynamo Riga. They play them at the Coventry Sky Dome Arena next month on Wednesday, the 6th of February. Oh, I really want to go see that. They probably don't have any tickets, though. So, let's just let me just give you the list of players, shall I? And you can tell me what you think. I'll preface this by saying quite a lot of them were part of the gold medal winning team last year at the World Championships, so that's a good sign. So, for the goaltenders, we have Ben Bounds and Jackson Whistle of the Cardiff Devils and the Sheffield Steelers, respectively. What?
No surprise.
Yeah, no surprise. Then for defence, we have Tim Billingsley, who is making his first appearance on the GB squad. We have Dallas Earhart. We have Mark Garside. We have Stevie Lee. We have Evan Mosey. We have Ben O'Connor, David Phillips, Mark Richardson, Zach Sullivan, and Paul Swindlehurst. So, those are your defensemen. So, we've got 2 players from the Panthers. We've got 2 players from the Steelers. 1 player from the Devils. 2 players from the Giants. And 1 player from Glasgow. And 1 player from Manchester. Then forwards, we have Ollie Betteridge, Jordan Cowney, Ben Davies. Is that him? Nope, Ben Davies, yep. Robert Dowd, Robert Farmer, Luke Ferrara, Mike Hammond, Lewis Hook, Robert Lakovic, Ben Lake, who's making his first appearance on the GB squad, Kieran Long, Matthew Myers, Brett Polini, and Jonathan Phillips. So those are your players for the 26-man squad for the friendly game against Dynamo Riga next month. So Chris, what do you think about that roster?
It's a strong roster. I like Ollie Betteridge getting in there.
Yep.
Because, well, I like Ollie Betteridge, former Lion. Lakovic as well. I think it's a strong squad, particularly with Bounds in goal. We all know what he can do.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to it. I think, yeah, I mean, strong overall. Interesting to see how they play together because obviously they're used to being on different sides.
Yep.
But I'm looking forward to it. I'm interested to see how our national team stack up against, a club team.
And in one of the better leagues in the world
as
well. Like, we're not playing a DEL side here. We're not playing an Austrian team here. We're playing one of the mediocre teams in the best league, arguably outside of North America.
Like,
the KHL is home to some pretty impressive players. Some guys, mainly Russians, will forego playing in the NHL to play in their home country. Like, that's the point that the league is at the moment. So, granted, Dinamo Riga aren't quite one of the best teams in the league. I can't quite remember where they're sitting in the standings, but they're a good team. Like, I watched them at the KHL World Games a couple of months ago. They're a good team. They've got some good players on that roster. Like, they're just because they're not the best team in the KHL, they're not pushovers, you know. Like,
no, not at all.
Yeah, they'll give you a run for your money, especially the GB team. Like, we're not exactly like setting the world on fire, let's be honest. So, I think this roster's good. Like, we've got some new faces in there. Tim Billingsley, I'm not too sure, but then again, that's my personal opinion. I don't really see why he makes the cut personally. I think he's a good defenseman. Do I think he's worthy of the GB squad call-up over perhaps some of the other guys available? I'm not sure. But then again, I don't run the GB roster, so it's not my... Who cares what I think?
No, I think Pete Russell definitely has a plan.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because he's picked each of those players to do a particular job in the team and to play a particular way that he wants.
Well, you know what he's done? He's gone, right, we're going to do basically the same thing we did last year, because it clearly worked well for us, so why not? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we're going to add in 1 or 2 new players to the roster that can help take it to that next level, hopefully.
Hopefully, so, yeah.
Why not? Yeah. I really hope that if I don't get there, that Coventry do a webcast for that, because I will buy that in a heartbeat. I will absolutely buy that in a heartbeat. So, yeah, let us know what you think about the roster in the chat. We're kind of neglecting the chat a little bit. We will answer questions more towards the end of the podcast. It's just because we've got quite a lot to go through, and we want to make sure we cover everything. I know some of you might only be interested in the NHL stuff. Some of you might only be interested in the Elite League stuff, so just bear with us, you know. Then we move on to some of the junior GB junior stuff. So the start of the new year means lots of different under whatever age tournaments are taking place, and this is the first one we're talking about, which concluded recently, the GB Under-18s women's squad. Now, they played pretty well in Dumfries, I believe it was.
And, they did. Jono went up to, my fellow Lions commentator, Jono went up to cover them. GB, the Under-18 women, they got the bronze. They beat the top seeds in a shootout. Some great... I watched the shootout back. It was, really fun to watch. And the future is bright.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I must admit, the GB... women's players, because hockey isn't, or because ice hockey in this country isn't covered enough as it is, with like our proper, like, quote unquote, like, best men's league out there, like, we don't really get much coverage from the women's leagues. Like,
they pop up in the World Championships and disappear again. Exactly.
Like, it's very much, they go very much unnoticed by those that aren't, like, really in the circles. So to hear that they've done really well is good. Like you said, we've clearly got some very good hockey playing women coming up through the system of the British system. So that's awesome. Like you said, they had a 4-2 victory over the Netherlands on the final day, which was awesome. So yeah, that's brilliant. But speaking of more under quote age here, the Under-20s tournament is currently taking place. This is, does it say it's the Under-20s tournament, World Championship Division 2 Group A in Tallinn.
Yeah.
So the first game for Team GB. So Team GB are playing Lithuania, Korea. Who else are they playing? Spain.
Romania.
Romania and Estonia. There you go.
Yeah.
And like we said last week, pretty much every single game is either live or delayed on Free Sports. There was the game yesterday where the GB Under-20s, which of course features such names as Liam Kirk and Kieran Brown and Clarkie's kid and what's his name?
You don't mean Clark, you mean Nielsen's kid.
Nielsen's kid's there as well.
Cade Nielsen, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, features such names as them, so slightly more well-known prospects, for want of a better term, in the GB system.
Yeah.
They went 4-0
and
down.
very much doing well.
Yes, they went well. They went 4-0 down against the top seed Lithuanian team yesterday. They bounced back and brought the game to a 6-4 final score, so a more respectable score. However, at 2:30 British time today, they took on the Korea under-20s team, and they absolutely destroyed them by a score of 13-1.
Yep.
So
it was brilliant. Like watching someone play the Lions.
Yeah, which Chris is very much accustomed to. If you thought that game was crazy, get yourself to a Lions game. You'll get used to it.
Hey, it was only 4-0 last night. Best game all season. The thing about this Great Britain under-20 squad though is they have position 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 in the points. The top 8 people in the points are Great Britain, apart from 2. You've got Josh Waller with 6 points, Liam Kirk with 6 points, and Jordan Bressa with 5 points. Those are the top 3, all for Great Britain.
Well, it's understandable considering they just put 13 goals past Korea, you know.
Well,
what's the
Liam
time?
Kirk got
13
past
Korea. So yeah, exactly. Like they very much ran up the score sheet, and understandably so. You know, like it's a World Junior Championship. You want to score as many goals as possible because goal difference is something that could come into account in a tournament like this later on. So yeah, they're playing really well. It was shown on Free Sports earlier. So there's no games in the tournament tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, Team GB return to face hosts Estonia at 6 p.m. UK time on Free Sports, I believe. Or is that delayed? No, there's delayed coverage, excuse me, because of the EIHL match being shown live between the Storm and the Guildford Flames. So there's delayed coverage of the game against Estonia, and then, of course, they'll have a few more games later on in the week against Spain, etc. So it's nice to hear that the team's doing well. They're, 17 goals scored to 7 against, so that's pretty good. Impressive. Now, we move on to probably the most heartbreaking story for British hockey this last week. Last week, of course, we mentioned that the Belfast Giants were taking part in the final round of the Continental Cup, which usually the winner of this cup goes through to the Champions Hockey League for the next season. And it took the final game, it took a shootout in the final game of the tournament. But unfortunately, the Belfast Giants fell in a shootout after winning the first 2 games, going 2-0 down in the final game, tying the game with, like you said, with 1 minute and 20 seconds, and then taking it through overtime into a shootout. They lost in the shootout to Arlan Kokshetsau. I believe that's how you pronounce it, the Kazakhstani side. And it's just heartbreaking. You know, like, it's really sad. They were so close.
They really were. Through. It wasn't just a shootout. They needed extra penalties at the end of the shootout.
Yeah, it went to sudden death. Absolutely.
They already. I mean, I can remember the fifth penalty. Belfast had to score, and they did. And it took them into extra penalties. I was keeping one eye on it on my phone whilst I was in the commentating on the third period of the Lions last night, and I was just kept refreshing for it to load up, and it just went the wrong way, and I
remember when my phone vibrated with the flash scores notification. I was like, no, why?
Yeah, I know, and it was just what makes it even worse is that Arlan can't even go into the CHL.
Yeah, so moving on to this, I think this is a good time to bring this up. Now, we mentioned last week, I believe Chris brought it up last week, that Arlan winning the Continental Cup, usually, and we've seen this usually in past years that we've seen, the winner of this cup goes on to play in the Champions Hockey League.
Yes.
So, for example, when the Panthers won it, we had 2 teams the next year in the Champions Hockey League. We had our league champions, the Cardiff Devils, and the Nottingham Panthers, who won the cup. Yes. However, Arlan aren't going to play in the Champions Hockey League next season. So, I have an article written by the Champions Hockey League 22 hours ago, and it says the following. Arlan Kokshetsau are the winners of the 2018-19 EIHL Continental Cup. However, where does it say? The CHL board decided and communicated in December already that Arlan cannot be accepted as a Champions Hockey League qualifier if they win the EIHL Continental Cup, for the reason that travel logistics to Kazakhstan are too expensive for Champions Hockey League teams. Now, as Ireland won the tournament, the Champions Hockey League will now take the decision on the wild card for the Continental Cup winners back to the board and communicate the outcome in due course. Now, this is somewhat unprecedented, I would argue. So every single year, barring this one, since 2014, so 2014, 15, 16, 17 and 18, all of those teams have gone on to play in the Champions Hockey League the next year. So this is something very out of the blue, very unexpected. It was obviously mentioned before that they weren't going to play due to travel costs, etc., etc. But that's very interesting. It's very, very interesting to see the fact that the winners aren't actually going to be able to do it. Kind of makes you wonder why they'd want to win it then in the first place.
Well, I mean, I've just done a very, very quick on my phone from Arlan over to Cardiff, just for example.
Okay.
How many? It's in kilometres. So how many kilometres do you think? Bearing in mind, like to Germany or something, it'll be a few hundred. You know. How many do you think it is?
I'm going to say, for a one-way trip?
Yeah, just the one way.
1,500 kilometres.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, all right.
6,500.
Wow.
That's why they're not in it.
Which, for the Central European teams, is slightly better, but for a team like Cardiff...
I mean, okay, let's take SC Bern just for...
Okay, in Switzerland,
just for an example. They're still 6,100 kilometres.
Granted, okay, they're a fucking mile away.
So yeah, it's only 400 kilometres between Cardiff and Bern so it's still a long way away, which is why they're not in.
So that brings into question who gets in it then? Who is going to be the next team? Now, I'm going to suggest surely the common sense thing to do is put Belfast through. Now, I'm not saying that as like we need more teams in the Champions Hockey League. It's more, it literally took to sudden death penalties to differentiate these two teams from being the winner and second place. Like, it's not as if they're going for a sympathy vote by putting Belfast through. Like, they were quite literally one shot away from going through to the Champions Hockey League. I would think that makes common sense. I mean, of course, they might choose the playoff champion of another league or the regular season winner from a league that's never been in it, perhaps, which would also be pretty awesome. But then again, I think Belfast would be obviously the most logical, in my opinion, because what have they got to lose? We've had a team in the league for the last 3 or 4 seasons. So they know what to expect. It's like another 100 kilometers.
Yeah, I mean the thing with they've got to be careful. They can't just go, oh well, we'll do another team from this league, because as Max said, it's the commissioner's choice. But because they have this rule in the group stage, you can't have 2 teams from the same country playing each other. They can't just throw in another Swedish team without considering if it'll mess the draw up.
Which is why.
So they do have to think about it a bit.
Which is why having a team from this country would be better, or a place like France, or a place like Poland. Like having a team from one of those countries, because they only usually have one team in the tournament anyway. So all you have to do is just make sure those two aren't drawn in the same group. Sorted.
Yeah, I reckon they might wait to see what happens in this. Obviously, if Belfast win the league and they get in anyway, it will go somewhere else. If not, they might consider Belfast. I mean, I think we're just going to have to wait and see. They're going to do what they feel is best for the CHL.
Which, no doubt, will be one of the Central European teams, but we can wish. So, we move on across the pond, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to the National Hockey League. We don't really have a... So, Chris and I had a little chat about a debate topic for today. We're almost an hour into the podcast already, so we haven't really needed one. But, yeah, we couldn't really think of anything because nothing really crazy has gone on recently in the British League or the NHL or anything like that. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on to the NHL, the National Hockey League. So this is where some of you guys might open up your ears a little bit and be like, oh, let's talk about this. So, the standings. Let's just go through the league, see what's going on. First place, very clear in first place still, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're destroying the league at the moment. They're 5 games over halfway, and they have 72 points already this year. Like, they're on pace for almost 140 points. They're on pace for like a 70-win season. Like, that would be crazy. The Calgary Flames are second, which they're playing very well at the moment. San Jose are third, Winnipeg are fourth, and Vegas are fifth, but they're tied on points. However, Vegas have played more games. The Capitals sit in sixth, the Maple Leafs sit in seventh, the Nashville Predators are eighth, the Blue Jackets are ninth, Boston are 10th, Pittsburgh are 11th, the Islanders are 12th, Montreal are 13th, Buffalo are 14th, Dallas are 15th, Carolina are 16th, Colorado are 17th, Minnesota 18th, Anaheim 19, which we'll talk about in more detail later. The Vancouver Canucks are 20th, the Edmonton Oilers are 21st, the Arizona Coyotes are 22nd, the New York Rangers, are 23rd, the St. Louis Blues are 24th, the Florida Panthers are 25th, the New Jersey Devils are 26th, the Chicago Blackhawks are 27th, the Detroit Red Wings are 28th, the Ottawa Senators are 29th, the Los Angeles Kings are 30th, and in very surprising fashion, the Philadelphia Flyers sit at the bottom of the standings with a 1-7-2 record in their last 10 games.
Wow.
Damn.
I mean, I'm looking at the wild card at the minute. The wild cards all behaving themselves.
Yep.
I remember early on in the season, the wild cards had like more points than the teams that was like top of the other division.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, but the wild card behaving itself. So in the East, it's the Islanders and the Canadians, and in the West, it's the Avalanche and the Wild.
So just in case you're interested in some of the streaks happening in the league, Calgary on a 5-game winning streak, San Jose on a 6-game winning streak, Erik Karlsson really tearing up the league, which is helping my fantasy a lot. Thanks, bud. Then we've got the Anaheim Ducks have lost their last 11 straight games with a 0-6-4 record in their last 10, which really isn't good, which we'll talk about in more detail later.
Yep.
But other than that, it's either one loss here, 2 wins there, etc., etc. So, the news from the NHL. The first news we're going to talk about is from January 11th. So last week we mentioned that the NHL All-Star game had introduced this new thing this year called the Last Men, or the Last Men In, which I think it's a pretty cool idea, to be honest. The fact that you have some guys that might not have made the initial cut, and you, based on their stats so far this season, you get the chance to vote for them to be the last person to play for their respective conference or their respective division. So, the last players in were announced on the 11th of January. And for the Atlantic Division, Buffalo Sabres left wing Jeff Skinner. I think a 30-goal scorer this season, so understandable. Colorado Avalanche left wing Gabriel Landeskog. Currently roughly 15th in the league in points so far this season on that killer line with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Heiskanen.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman Chris Letang from the Metropolitan Division, which was one that I was probably the most confused about. And then Edmonton Oilers centre Leon Draisaitl from the Pacific Division. Bearing in mind this is all due to fan vote, so it's not
so
like
the teams with a bigger fan base are going to kind of have an advantage, aren't they?
Although Jeff Skinner, that's a pretty good vote. Like the Buffalo Sabres, I would expect them like that's more people like from around the league going, he's had a fantastic season since he left Carolina. Put him in. Gabriel Landeskog, arguably the same. Leon Draisaitl is the only other guy on the Oilers roster that actually puts up points. And Chris Letang, I can imagine. Chris Letang's had some very up and down years these last few years. So the fact that he's back in an All-Star game, he seems very happy about it. I did read the caption of something recently saying that Patrice Bergeron didn't want to go to the All-Star game. He was very happy he wasn't voted in. I don't know whether that's legit or not. I think it was a Yahoo Sports article or something that I saw. I can't quite remember.
I wonder if that's him going. It's like when a child goes, "I don't care,"
or it's more him going, "I've been to enough of these. I'm exhausted. Like, give me a week off."
It's one of the two. It's either him trying to have a backhanded kind of, make out he doesn't care when he's actually annoyed, or he actually just doesn't care.
Just like Carey Price and Alexander Ovechkin aren't going to the All-Star game. One, because they want to rest, because they just won the Stanley Cup last summer, understandable, and the other because he's injured. So, two very key names not going to the All-Star game. Interestingly, 11.5 million votes were cast over a week to get these players. And that included a single day high of more than 2 million votes the day before or the last day of balloting. So that's pretty crazy.
It is.
Skinner will be making his second All-Star appearance. Letang will be playing in his 5th All-Star game. Landeskog and Draisaitl will both be making their All-Star game debuts. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty nice. Congrats to them.
I mean, as we said last week, looking forward to the skills. Don't care about the games.
Yep, I think having a guy like Jeff Skinner there will be good for the skills competition. Draisaitl will be pretty good. Having Captain Gabriel Landeskog there will be a nice touch as well. Chris Letang, he always has a good laugh. So, yeah, I think that's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. So, moving on. I mean, there isn't really much to add to that. We gave you the facts. Let's move on.
No.
So, anyway, now this is one that I very much